Welcome to Gardening Through the Seasons. I'm Gary Bachman, horticulture specialist with the Mississippi State University Extension Service, and I'm based at the Coastal Research and Extension Center in Biloxi. Many home gardeners like to use these pots that are called self-irrigating or sub-irrigating containers. They have a feature where the saucer is actually attached to the container, and there's wells on the bottom of the container that hold the media that when you attach it to the saucer, the water is actually wicked up through the media almost like a sponge from that saucer, and it helps keep a more consistent media moisture for your plants. A newer trend in sub-irrigated containers or sub-irrigated planters are these larger containers. This happens to be a commercial variety called an Earthbox, which I use in my garden. There's many other commercially available containers. You can also make homemade containers out of plastic tubs that you can get at the hardware store. They're not going to last as long, and there's plans on the internet in case you're interested in making your own. The Earthbox is set up very similar to that smaller container that we just looked at. It has a reservoir in the bottom of the container that holds about 2.5 gallons of water. It also has an overflow on it, so you can't fill the pot up too much and make like a soup bowl out of this. The media sits on this screen that holds the media up above the reservoir, but it's these corners called the wicking chambers that actually where the media goes down in, is in contact with the water in the reservoir, and that's where it acts like then a sponge and draws the water up out of the reservoir and into the media that's in the rest of the container. So the basic structure and operation is very similar to these small pots, except this small pot we're going to water from the top and let that saucer in the bottom collect the water. On this Earthbox or this big sub-irrigated planter, we don't want to water from the top. We want to put the water directly into that reservoir, so we're going to do that through this irrigation tube that gets stuck down in the corner. The next step that you want to do is fill the box with potting mix. And it's really important to pick a commercially bagged mix that has peat moss, pine bark, core fiber in there, a mix that you would grow a normal potted plant in. You don't want to choose a mix that has soil in it. If it has soil in the name, you want to stay away from that. You want potting mix, potting substrate, container mix. And so what we're going to do here is we're just going to start filling the box with mix like this till it's about 1/3 full. And then what we'll do is we want these wicking corners, we want to go ahead and we want to pack the mix in around these wicking corners, and that helps with that sponge-like quality of wicking the water up into the mix. After you have the box about 1/3 full and you've packed the wicking corners, we have to start thinking about nutrition for the plants. Typically we're going to add 2 cups of dolomite to this mix. The peat-based potting mix is a little light on calcium and magnesium, and so we add dolomite to add those 2 elements, and it also helps to moderate the pH a little bit, as these materials can be just a little bit on the acidic side. So we'll take about half of this dolomite, and I'm using the pelletized. It's easier to use. You can use the pulverized if you want. And I'm just going to sprinkle about half of it in at this point. And then when I've got half of it here, I'm just going to take my fingers and just kind of scratch it in. It doesn't have to be thoroughly mixed or anything, but just kind of distribute it into the top of that layer that you've just put in. The next step is to go ahead and put the 2/3 of the potting mix in the box. And I'm just going to take the bag and I'm just going to pour it this time. It's a little easier to handle. And we'll just pour it in like that. And that looks to be about 1/3. Go ahead and kind of spread this out a little bit. And now I'm going to put the rest of the dolomite in, the second cup. And again, we're just going to sprinkle it in on top and then just work it into that into that layer like we did before. After we've distributed the dolomite in that last step, we need to really go ahead and pack the mix down, kind of like we did in the wicking corners. And you don't have to go crazy and beat on the mix or anything, but we want to have the mix compressed, and that helps with the wicking action. And after you do that, we want to go ahead and start adding water to the mix, because the mix has to be wet for it to work correctly from the wicking chambers from the reservoir. And so we can facilitate that by pre-wetting the top of the mix. And you really don't have to be afraid about over-watering this, because you might fill the reservoir up, but there's an overflow there, so you don't have to worry about putting too much water into the system. After wetting the mix down in that step, it's time to add the last third of the potting mix to the box. And as you do this, you're going to look and say, you know, there is no way in the world this is all going to fit in this box. Well, that's kind of by design. And you'll probably only get about this much into the box. And then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll press it down and kind of make this look like a loaf of bread. And there's a reason for that, which when we get to the end will become very evident. We get it pressed down, and now we're good to put the last of the mix in on top without spilling too much. And when we get to this point, we're going to do the same thing. Now, believe it or not, this is 2 cubic feet of mix that we've put into this box. And we've got a little bit of spillage, but that's really what you should look like after you've got all the mix packed down into your box like this. The next step is to add fertilizer to the system. The mix that you use may have said there's enough fertilizer included for 6 months for your plants. That's not entirely true. You need to add fertilizer to this system. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a furrow right on top. And you could go across the box like this, or you could make your furrow go this way in the box. It really doesn't make any difference. I like to go across the box like this. And what we're going to do is add 2 cups of 888, just regular granular fertilizer to this furrow. And what's going to happen is this fertilizer will slowly dissolve from the water and act as a slow release fertilizer over the course of the growing season for your plants. And we'll just make a furrow like this, and we'll just kind of flatten it out like that, and we're good. The next step that we're going to do, and this is really the most important step when we're using a sub-irrigated container like this, is we're going to put a cover over the top of the container. And this is plastic, and it's really kind of like a shower cap. And what this is going to do, this is going to block evaporation from the top surface of this media. And the only water that's lost from this system is what's transpired through the plant. It becomes a very efficient water use system this way. And what we'll do is we'll kind of pat this out, and we're going to plant tomatoes in this box. And what we'll do is we'll make an X cut on this side in the cover, an X cut on this side in the cover, and install our tomato plants right through the top of the cover. And here's the first X cut, and here's the second X cut. Now, to save time, I've already planted the first tomato plant in the box, so we'll go ahead and plant the second one. And basically it's just push a hole out with your hand, put your tomato plant in the hole, kind of even the mix out, and cover the hole back up, and you're done. I recommend you moving the box where it's going to be before adding water to the irrigation tube until water flows out the overflow. And if you water every day, pretty soon your plants are going to be flourishing, and you'll have a counter full of homegrown delicious tomatoes. I'm Gary Bachman, and thanks for joining me gardening through the seasons.